Superintendent.
Who else can they add?
Ooh, baby, I feel the hype for this one. May need to, bust out the old intro for this, my vintage intro. Hey yo, what is up everyone? It is the Alpha J of the Alpha J Show, and let's talk about Gumball for its final episode. Also plug in my Discord. Since the beginning of my channel, I've talked about Gumball and I've been a huge fan of the show. I know now it's a more popular show to cover. You had episodes like The Shell, The Puppets, The Money, The Copycats, The Shippening. Many popular episodes that people know of being revealed in later seasons. I covered the show initially because before I became a reviewer, no one really seemed to be interested in talking about the show. It sort of got trampled over to talk about the Steven Universes, the Adventure Times, the Starverses, the Avatars. And I do want to get into those shows as well, they just didn't hit me in the way that this show did. I've watched the show since the beginning, and I recall enjoying The Responsible and the DVD when I saw it the first time. I honestly didn't know what Gumball was going for until far into the season. Only then did I learn to appreciate the fact that a show like this exists. It is a show that is not bound to any animation styles, giving you 2D characters, 3D characters, stop motion characters, live action characters, and everything in between. It's a show that gave light to its main characters, but also shone a light on the minor characters that other shows would just leave to the wayside. It's a show that had a main character who was mean, a town that was selfish, and jokes that involved everything from meta humor to well-animated slapstick. It was not a show that wanted to take what worked before and give us something that we've most likely already seen. It made me realize that in a sea full of critical YouTube reviewers, my criticisms to push the medium forward lie not just in quality, but also in variety. I say all of this to say that the finale does not care about any of the traits that it has, or the achievements that it's made. It does not care that it has had an incredible run, a run that was supported with a generous amount of airtime in proportion to other shows. If we keep this episode, The Inquisition, within the context of being a series finale, then there are several problems with just everything from every perspective. I didn't want to rush this. I don't care if I missed the trend or hype bus because it's Gumball. I'm going to cover episodes after this involving Gumball. I'm not going to just cover the finale and then pretend that the show didn't exist. But because I can ramble on forever, I guess if I never start, I'll never finish.
Pull yourself together, Nigel. You sound like a winded Chinese opera singer.
He's coming.
Who?
The school superintendent.
Principal Brown panics about the superintendent coming back. He does a good job at presenting the terror and power that the superintendent has over the school. However, that is where my praise ends. Let me present to you The Fraud, the 11th episode in season 3. Principal Brown panics because we learned that his diploma is a fake, and he goes above and beyond to try to mend things so that he doesn't get exposed as the fraud that he is, or was. That episode does this in a better way, with a better concept and a better payoff. There is potential and a larger than life character coming into the picture, even when this character isn't hyped, quote unquote. You wanna know why I say hyped, quote unquote, and not just hyped? Well, let's get into it then. I don't have any interest in building the suspense because nearly every problem comes after the reveal than before, so let me just say no. Let me show you the reveal.
Huh? What the?
Rob?
But who's hiding behind this mask? Oh no, sorry everyone.
I know this happens at the last bit of the episode, but this provides so much clarity to you, to me, and to the episode, so we're all on the same page now. To anyone who considers this episode, The Inquisition, to be a bad episode, I do not agree. I do not consider the finale, The Inquisition, to be a bad episode, if you're just looking at it as an episode. The episode essentially just revolves around the disguised Rob making people's lives worse before he gets caught and dealt with. Because of how the show dealt with Rob, that is not a bad episode. And for me to explain why this episode doesn't work, I need to go back.
Rob was a character who was minor. He wasn't considered to be a character that the audience should care about. He became so secondary that him being forgotten became his primary trait. Although he'd get upset about people forgetting his name, it wouldn't change the fact that he himself is not considered important. He became self-aware of his little worth, and so did Elmore. It was revealed that there is a place for people like him, people who no longer receive the spotlight, as little they had. The Void. Now, even though Gumball and Darwin had great intentions for rescuing another minor character, Molly, from the void, little did they know that she was not the only character put there. Imagine being so forgotten that in the place full of things forgotten, you were so irrelevant that characters didn't even think to rescue you. In Rob's first act of putting forth initiative, taking a stance and making his own fate, he latched onto the relevance vehicle, bringing himself out of the hole that characters like his wallow in. It showed Rob that for him to become important, he must get rid of the systems in place that put him down. Unfortunately, that is Gumball.
This is why Rob became one of the main antagonists of the show. He did not want to be forgotten. He just wanted a place in Elmore, the place where all the misfits and the scrap characters meta-wise seem to have found a home. And this marks a change in his character both on the inside and outside. As now disfigured, he knows that he's supposed to be in the void, and that being in Elmore is against the laws that put him in the void in the first place. He is aware that there are bigger powers that dictate the ongoing nature of Elmore. Rob doesn't know why he was put in the void in the first place, but he does remember that the two that could have saved him did not. His plan from that point is to destroy Gumball and Darwin. Why? Because they have all the attention. Without Gumball and Darwin, then as far as he knows, there is no attention at all, which means that he gets equal attention, or that the spot is up for grabs. Aside from Tobias a few times, no one else seems to notice that there's a clear focus on the Watterson family. And speaking of, Gumball never really takes Rob seriously in his first attempts to destroy him, because Rob has to go through the growing pains of understanding his power, and exactly what he needs to do specifically to reach his goal. His first few attempts don't work. However, they all don't work because they deal within the normal laws of Elmore. This is why his first major attempt works, dealing with bending the laws of time, physics, and reality. To be so sinister that you break apart someone's family one by one just because they didn't know to rescue you is what makes Rob a great antagonist. However, upon getting his attention, he couldn't finish the deed, and it's clear why. This deed gave him purpose within the show, both in and out of the story. This was his role. This was his motivations. This was his life. If he finished off Gumball, then what? What's next in his life? It's clear that he didn't want to find out at that moment. So after that, he knew that Gumball was actually not the biggest problem, for there was a bigger problem at his grasp. But he'd learned that too late. Although he'd mess with Gumball sometimes and bend reality once more, it was at the future, where he finally realized that something was going to happen to Elmore. And the person who would know is Banana Barbara. However, because of his aggression, he wouldn't find the answers, but he'd find more questions. And so did the audience. In fact, that episode serves as a better finale than the finale, but let's keep on track. If you'd like to see a breakdown of the future or even a breakdown of the Gumball and Rob arc in detail, let me know. But going back to the future, he'd be erased. Yes, erased. Not put in a void, not pushed aside, erased. And that leads into this episode here, where knowing that the future wields something terrible, he wants to stop it. The problem is, this episode doesn't give us what that is.
Oh no, it started.
And that's the problem, because this is a series finale. This is not just an average episode. If this were a season finale, not a series finale, a season finale leading into another season, then this would be a great episode. In fact, I wish it were. I wish this is what led into another season, where it deals into finding out why Elmore is breaking apart. If it ends here, there is no payoff. This isn't something as small as Gumball kissing Sarah, something that I did have an issue with in this episode, but that was more of a personal problem because I don't like the character. This episode as is, as the end of the series, with no season, no movie, no previous episodes that gave more clues, makes the finale stand against everything that it's built up and represented. I mean, the sheer amount of potential built from Banana Barbara's future readings, to the void, to even some of the still images I saw of the finale before I watched it. All of it is written as if it naturally leads somewhere. This is not a fully episodic series. It has light continuity, as I showed with Rob alone. In fact, if you don't believe that, go back to other episodes, to where I showed there was a point in time where Gumball and Penny weren't dating, and then they did. Showing that Darwin and Carrie weren't dating, and then they did. In fact, I had people pointing out in the comment section that in the web, it showed that that Nicole got along with her parents in that photo, being at a place where they initially weren't. There's also Granny JoJo and Louie. There's so much continuity that a lot of people just don't want to go over. There are questions that won't be answered, and this finale does absolutely nothing about any of the questions. In fact, it gives us more questions. If this were a restaurant, I have filled myself from breadsticks. I'd like to move on to the main course, please.
I'm sorry, Nigel. It's just not professional for two members of staff to be in a relationship.
Simeon, I'm cutting your pay in half.
What? Why?
For being half asleep on the job.
Sure, I can harp on the fact that Miss Simeon's character takes a de-evolution, pun fully intended, by essentially being outed as a power-hungry opportunist, but why bother? Because the bigger question is, why did she not know about anything the superintendent did or stand for until today? If she's worked there for over 3,000 years, and apparently knew of this disdain for her kind, then you would think that she'd show this. She doesn't. It's almost as if this superintendent doesn't exist.
You fools! I did all this for a reason. Don't you understand what's going on in Elmore? You have two choices. Live in ignorance about what's gonna happen here, or listen to what I have to say. It might just save your lives.
In fact, it does such a good job. Let's praise the build-up for a second. It's a fantastic build-up. The problem lies with the lack of a payoff. Imagine some of the funniest jokes, some of the funniest moments in your life. Someone slipping and falling, someone getting completely owned verbally, or maybe even those points where animals do weird things. There's a payoff in every single one of those jokes. The part that makes it funny, in combination with the setup. So imagine a joke winding up and then not delivering. That sense of disappointment is the poison around this episode. I almost want to believe I'm being trolled. I want to come out in a few months and say that we were all wrong and that something will come out. I mean, if Steven Universe can get a movie, you're telling me that Gumball can't? Gumball doesn't perform as well? Even though it airs way more than Steven Universe? Maybe it's the budget. Maybe it's internal politics. Maybe some of the internet rumors are correct. Maybe it's the fact that Cartoon Network is self-aware that they don't need to do anything, so it's financially in their favor to not do anything. Either way, you've essentially kept the boat unwrapped for an entire series. And think of some of the shows I've covered. Foster's Home, Wander Over Yonder, Fish Hooks, Harvey Beaks. These finales are satisfying to me. Yes, they do leave some clues and some questions behind, as nearly every finale does, but at least they answer the general question, is this over? Literally, Final Space did this exact same ending in their episode structure for their last episode in the first season, and I praise it for being a great tease. And it became even better because we got a second season. However, the difference there and here is that for that episode, the writing suggests that if it ends there, then you'd know what the answer is to, is this over? There isn't anything meta about this finale. There isn't anything built up from other episodes acknowledged here. It goes against everything the show is building itself up for. I didn't care that the show went for a more meta, modern, cynical focus in its later seasons. I didn't necessarily care for it, but that was the path that you went for. You can't be mad at the castle you built. I mean, you would expect at some point in laying down the bricks that you built the wrong castle. Even the little things implied here are messed up. Did you know that the last Nicole episode is the web?
Where'd she go?
I'm setting up the firewall. No. Right, that should do it.
She would make a cameo in another episode, but her last major episode is the web. An episode that essentially builds up her self-aware character to be every single old person using the internet joke. That's her final contribution. She's not here, Richard isn't here, Anais isn't here, Penny's barely shown. Yes, we can bring up the same Banana Barber clip that everyone and their mother has sent to me about her looking towards the camera and the family running away from chaos. But that hasn't come into fruition yet. And plus that would just be more reason to get upset at this episode. And look, would this be better if Cartoon Network gave it 22 minutes? I don't know. This was a popular question for the crossover nexus. But the issue here is that at least with the crossover nexus, that was an open and shut special. Imagine if it ended with no payoff. Do you know the outrage? The raw outrage this episode would have unleashed if it was 22 minutes of this? I don't even want to think about that. And I don't want to talk about the plot in this episode, because if you think it was good, it was a good build up to nothing. And if it was bad, then it was a bad finale. Either way, it's a bad finale. And what's crazy is that it didn't need to be this way. At what point did Cartoon Network Ben or the staff knew that this was going to be the last episode? You're telling me that he didn't have a finale plan? Because if the finale was just a movie, dude, you better hope for the movie. And speaking of Ben, yes, he's going on record wanting to do more with Gumball. And no, this is not an invitation to harass the dude, because you and I don't really know who to point the finger to. We don't know why this episode was this result. And I'm perfectly comfortable with not pointing fingers at anyone because I don't know what went wrong behind the scenes. I'd like to know, but I'm afraid just like with this finale, we have a lot of questions and no answers. And to that I say, I'm done.